So for me, everything is about compounding. You do a little bit each day and, it compounds. I think a lot of people have a hard time with that. They don't see growth right away, so they worry. Everything compounds on top of everything. If you can, instead of sitting in your house doom scrolling on TikTok for 2 hours, put that 2 hours to work doing something that's beneficial that can compound over time. For me, that's the main thing. And what can I get done this week? Maybe it's in 2 hours, I get a little bit further and like, okay, that's great. That's a milestone. I'll just keep going, just keep compounding. So at the base level, that's really what it is.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Your Business, Your Next Level. I'm your host, Eunicia Peret, and today I have in the studio with me Gary Nicholson. He is the co-founder of Marina Trace, building technology that helps businesses reclaim lost revenue and run smarter, more profitable operations. He was raised on a ranch in East Texas, and he is a Navy veteran. Gary has also built a career in advertising while also working with brands like Lexus, Nike, and Bosch, among others, and learning how small inefficiencies can hide huge opportunities. He left the corporate life to buy and scale businesses, applying a hands-on operator mindset to uncover, listen to this, hidden value and how that can transform businesses. So now he actually helps other business owners and entrepreneurs grow smarter, more profitable ventures. And I am so pleased, Gary, to welcome you to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So your professional life has quite a bit of twists and turns in it.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit more about how did you get from growing up on a ranch in Texas to going into the Navy to then buying and selling businesses to now obviously you operate a business that helps entrepreneurs do better and truly become more profitable.
Yeah. So I, like I said, ranch to Navy to college, and then from college to freelancing and advertising, and then finally becoming an employee, realizing that wasn't really my path, that owning something on your own was better. So I just started building in parallel on the side, and I invested my money. I saved a lot of money. I bought real estate that was cash flowing real estate. And then I started buying boring businesses. And the biggest thing about boring businesses is that they tend to be very paper processes heavy. So just immediately on the initial coming in, the best thing to do is put some tech in there, streamline processes, get rid of the paper as much as possible. And so that's what I've done. And that's helped quite a bit.
What type of businesses would fall under the boring business category?
I mean, it could be anything from window washing to roofing to, any kind of service-based business.
So you purchase businesses, you identify the inefficiencies,
Correct.
And then you're positioned to sell them. How long
Yes.
do you typically hold on to a business after you realign it and you turn the profits around?
Usually 3 to 5 years.
Okay.
Usually.
So how do you identify those overlooked infrastructure heavy sectors that you focus on transforming into the profitable, scalable businesses using technology? And I understand that you're using smart systems and SaaS in a lot of your companies. Is that correct?
Yes, correct. Yes.
Tell us more about that. How
So
do you identify those companies?
when you say identify, what do you mean? Like identify, like that they have a need for that?
Well, how do you identify the companies that, first of all, you would want to look at? And then how do you, those overlooked companies that you were talking about, their infrastructure heavy, and what does that process look like once you identify it, such a company to go in
Right.
and say, okay, it needs to be turned around?
Okay. Yeah. So like I said earlier, a lot of companies, they still rely on paper a lot, and, paper's heavy. It's takes up space. It's cumbersome. You lose papers. It's hard to keep that stuff in order. That's typical, like a filing cabinet. There's 4 or 5 filing cabinets at one company that I bought, and it's like, we got to get rid of that. So, we just digitized everything, and it all lives in the cloud, so we can access it whenever necessary. But that's the biggest thing. A lot of those companies that, they're 50, 60, maybe even 100 years old. I own a roofing company that's 102 years old this year. It was a family-owned company, very paper heavy. And I went in and streamlined a lot of things. There's several like SaaS roofing products out there as far as like, CRM, customer relationship management. I implemented that and streamlined that process. And that's helped quite a bit to really cut down on the hours, the labor to accomplish things, keeping it all in one spot and easy to reference.
That's absolute. Paper is always something that, to your point, it becomes an anchor. Back
Guys,
in the strategy consulting days, that sometimes partners would want to hear the thud effect. Literally, they would take
sure.
a deck and drop it on the desk to see just what a thud effect it had. So it was a thing.
Yeah,
It still probably is a thing for a lot of companies. As you're looking, Gary, one of the things that you talk about is how small inefficiencies, underused assets, and outdated processes often hide massive revenue and growth potential outside of the cabinets, the paper cabinets and the filing cabinets that you see out there. What are some of the other inefficiencies that you typically see with businesses that perhaps entrepreneurs and business owners don't really think about it in the traditional sense of the word?
sure. So the biggest thing I've seen in the service-based industry is the sales process. It's very cumbersome. Again, paper is a big part of it. And then, they have to price everything and give an estimate. That takes time. Maybe there's only one person in the sales team that can actually do an estimate, or maybe they have to talk to a subject matter expert in the company. So what I've done using AI, I've created learning language models to do a lot of the estimation work for you already. And those learning language models are built with a subject matter expert. It can't do the whole estimate, but it can get a lot of things done. It can lay out the scope of work. You can say, oh, this is a repair for this roof. Here's the parameters, and it will literally write up the scope of work. It may not be perfect, but it gets them a lot further along in the process so they can spit those estimates out and get them to the potential customer. So that's probably one of the biggest things, is refining that sales process and using AI to try to cut down on the labor.
Have you applied that process to service-based companies as
I
well?
have, yeah.
Well, arguably, roofing would be a service-based business, but
Right.
something that
Yes.
has more intangible deliverables. And how does that work?
Like HVAC, even window cleaning, there's opportunities for AI in that too, so.
What about professional services businesses? Have you done anything on that front?
Professional, when you say professional, you talk about like law
So
firms
think
or?
of law, accounting, any of the more skilled, if you will.
Actually ramping up to do that. I have a development team that I've worked with for many years that are here in Southern California, and we have developed a way for like law firms and any other like professional service business. They can actually create their own learning language model on our platform. And so that means that it's not connected to the internet, meaning it won't search the internet for answers. The subject matter experts within that organization will feed and teach that LLM, and they'll continually refine it based on questions that are asked and the answers received.
That's
So
beautiful. That
that's what we're
also
moving more to
protects
that
the
now.
information from
Correct. Correct. Yes.
the
And
other
then
element.
the law firm could offer a subscription to someone who says, hey, I need some legal services. And they can say, well, you can hire us at $4.50 an hour, or you can use this subscription model, learning language model to, get a lot of it done. And then we'll come in and bill you for like 4 hours instead of like 20 hours for $450 an hour.
So, Gary, speaking of that, how do you see, what's your perspective on working with third-party providers that perhaps are able to offer strategic solutions that are outside of your area of expertise? Talk to us a little bit about how do you partner with external firms, or do you?
I don't really partner with external firms. Maybe that's something down the road, but at the moment, I don't really partner with any external firms. As far as the service-based business side, yeah, I do partner with other trades because that just makes things better. You get referrals and things like that through that network, and you refer as well. So
Makes sense. Makes
yeah.
sense. So talk to us, shifting gears a little bit from, you used to be in corporate and you shifted to the ownership entrepreneur mindset. You're doing very well in terms of your revenues and companies and the growth that you've experienced. We have a lot of individuals most of our listeners are business owners, entrepreneurs. They're already doing exceptionally well. And there are some corporate executives that are listening because they know that there's something more out there. And even a lot of the entrepreneurs know that they could be doing more. They sometimes just don't know how to transition from what they've always done to perhaps something new or embracing a new idea. How did you navigate that world?
So for me, everything is about compounding. You do a little bit each day, and it compounds. I think a lot of people have a hard time with that. They don't see growth right away, so they worry. Everything compounds on top of everything. If you can, instead of sitting in your house doom scrolling on TikTok for 2 hours, put that 2 hours to work doing something that's beneficial that can compound over time. For me, that's the main thing. What can I get done this week? Maybe it's in 2 hours, they get a little bit further. I'm like, okay, that's great. That's a milestone. I'll just keep going, just keep compounding. So at the base level, that's really what it is. So
talk to us a little bit about how it was for you to take a chance on yourself. And the reason I ask this question is because oftentimes, I was actually just speaking with one of our team members earlier today, and the question was, Eunicia, there are so many people out there that say the right things. And when it comes to the actual delivery, we're specifically talking about Excelstra. When it comes to the actual delivery, people get burnt because they buy into the idea. They don't really understand that there's no delivery on the other side. And then they kind of go into their shell and they do nothing. They're paralyzed. You having sold and bought and sold so many different businesses, how was that transition when you had to take a chance on yourself to say, I know that there's more behind what you're saying, there's more in what you can do, and you were willing to take, to put kind of money and time and energy towards those efforts. What did it take for you to be able to do that and not go the other way to where the paralysis would have settled in because it's hard and it's unknown and all the things that so many individuals grappled with?
well, again, coming from a military background and a ranch background, you have to make decisions on the fly and take risks. And I just learned over time that, you have to take risks. You either do or you don't. I don't like words like try. I feel like try is the pause word. It's like you're not really doing anything. You either do it or you don't. That's pretty much it. You just have to take a chance. You have to do your due diligence and just jump in with both feet. The way I look at it is you live every day, you die once. Most people say, you the other way, but that's how I look at it. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I learn from it. I'll move on to something else.
It's right there with try. And I hear of people oftentimes saying, I hope. I'm like, please stop
Yeah,
hoping.
please.
Hoping is not a strategy.
No.
Hoping that in our world, hoping that your taxes will somehow become optimized because somebody said something and you're like, yeah, it makes sense. It's not going to happen, right? We have to actually go out there and take the action and do the thing that needs to be done in order to get to the next level.
Yeah. I think it's important that you don't want to get into the jump mindset. Like, I'm just going to jump. You have to really survey everything, take the 30,000-foot view and really do your due diligence. And so that when you do jump, it doesn't feel like you're just jumping off into nowhere and hoping for the best. Notice that word, hope. That's the problem.
I tell you what, Gary, I was on a masterclass just a few days ago because as a business owner, I do invest a ton in my skill sets and both on a personal level as a leader and of course in our area of business. And this particular workshop was very much focused on tax strategies. And it was such a big eye opener for me. There's so many individuals in there that were just absorbing all of this information. And of course, knowing what I know and being in the industry, I'm able to think through that 30,000-foot level. And I was talking to some of our team members and I said, here's the problem. A lot of individuals, to your point that you were making earlier, they hear a lot of the buzzwords and they just jump. And it was, let me tell you, it was a pretty big price tag. It was really big price tag for here are some ideas. Here's some things that you can do. And it was interesting because some of them, they had built the model in such a way where they were charging for the ideas and they were charging for the implementation too. And people don't know about it until they jump in. And then once they jump in, they go, what is this? And either they do a thing, they do something, they take some action that in some cases can actually be detrimental to them, or they do nothing. Right. And so, to your point about you have to jump, you also said it has to feel right. And that's one of the things that I tell people is if it doesn't feel right, don't do it. And if it feels right and you know that there's a need and you don't take that chance on yourself, you don't take the opportunity to go forward, then you also do not have permission to say, I could have, should have, would have, because, we all could have done that at some point in time. True. So you said it beautifully there.
Yeah. I think that one thing about buying service-based businesses, a good lesson is if you identify a business that you want to buy, maybe it's a mailbox place, one of those business places, those are for sale all the time. Go in there and work for the owner for a couple hours a week, on your off time, learn the business. That's the best way. Sometimes they'll pay you a little bit of money, just you come help them.
That's a good idea.
And that's a good way to learn the business. You get to understand the language, all the jargon, everything else. And it's that way you can kind of determine, okay, do I really want to buy this business or I don't,
Or even have somebody like a right-hand person or someone that
Right.
would be positioned to take over that business. That really is a great idea because you're understanding not just the numbers and the transition that comes with that, but truly how the business runs from the inside out. One of the things that we're very passionate and we talk a lot about, Gary, as a company and with our clients is oftentimes individuals will kind of go through that phase of, let's say, selling businesses, being on the other side. And because there are so many business brokers and investment bankers and all the people that would love nothing more than to just get their hands on a company, sell it, because that's when money exchanges hands.
Right.
Well, we advise business owners and individuals that are looking to buy businesses, just the same kind of along the lines of what you said, is really understand what is it that you're trying to achieve. Because at the end of the day, it's not just about money. On the selling side, please do not just hire someone to just sell your company, because chances are you're leaving a lot of money on the table. You're
Yes.
not going to be tax optimized. Your investments are not going to be optimized on the back end, especially if you don't have an unbiased team on your side. And as a purchaser, we see it on that side as well. We have clients that are always looking for opportunities. And one of our clients not long ago got into some sort of an emailing system where deals seemed like they were coming their way every single day. And so there would be a deal. If she kind of liked the industry that it was in, I would get an email. What does this look like? And in 99.9% of the cases, I'm sitting, I'm like, who in the world even puts these presentations together? Like it's embarrassing just to look at them. So
Sure.
what we did is we actually brought in our exit strategy team, and our lead partner there said, listen, just because you're getting an email, if you're getting an email about a business possibly being sold, the likelihood that's the right business for you to buy is very unlikely, because the businesses that are truly either undervalued or are best positioned for long-term success are not going to come through an email.
Yes. Agreed.
And it was such a big deja vu. She was like, well, I didn't know. Well, the people that are sending you those businesses, that's how they get compensated when the business sells. So they're going to want to sell it really badly and you're going to want to buy it. And that's the wrong mix.
It
So
is.
yeah,
Yeah.
I appreciate you going there.
Yeah.
Tell me, Gary, how do you recognize when industries are consolidating, or more importantly, when they're becoming inefficient?
What do you mean by consolidating? Because I do see a lot of private equity consolidating a lot of the trades businesses.
Well, that could be part of it, right? Just in general, this is one of the things that you had mentioned previously, recognizing when industries are consolidated or inefficient and knowing when to pivot from the employee to owner and using the acquisitions to scale profits quickly. Talk to us a little bit about that world.
So for service-based businesses, I always, before I buy that, I always look to see who the staff is and see who's been the right-hand man of the owner, or maybe they run the business while the owner's kind of hands off. And a lot of times those people, they don't want to buy the business themselves because they don't understand the business side of, they just understand the production side of it. You know, they can run the crews, they can order materials, they can, all the logistics, they can put all that together. But if you ask them to file something with the franchise tax board, they're going to freak out and say, what does that mean? So that's what I look for when I buy a business. One thing I do see with private equity is they tend to buy a lot of like HVAC companies. And a lot of those companies, have a really good customer base. But the problem is that the private equity, they squeeze so hard that those companies become inefficient by default. And they lose clients a lot that way. They up the prices for service. The customer service isn't the same. So back to my point about buying businesses that have staff in place, I think that's important because you can lose your customer base really quickly. I can't tell you how many people our customers have told us, like, I'm so glad that you guys are still around. I was using this other company, but they got bought out and now I don't even know who I'm talking to when I call them. And they seem to send me 50 text messages and emails and it just gets lost in the mix. And so that's a huge issue that I've seen here in Los Angeles. Yeah.
I appreciate you going there because that's an issue that we see even on the financial services side, is with so many companies, so much acquisition, so much on the mergers and acquisition side that has taken place, to where clients become lost in the shuffle.
They
They're
do.
promised one thing, that thing does not get delivered, number one, and number two, the investment compared to even just the trials and tribulations that they would have gone through are truly unmatched. And you're describing that through the lens of a trade company. And it's hard all across the board. It's hard for the trades businesses.
It
It's
is.
especially hard it's happening on the medical side. It's happening on the dental side. I can't tell you how many dentists, practice owner dentists, or physicians who used to own their own practices come our way and they go, "Where have you been? Where were you before I sold the company?" I'm like, well, clearly we were not in the same
Right.
pool together. We can look back with regrets. The only thing that we can do is to look at the today. And what I advise people is, as you know, in other individuals that are looking to especially sell, especially if it is to the PE world, please do yourself a favor. Do that friend of yours a favor and create a bridge so that they can get some unbiased support. Because if they don't, they're going to suffer just the same way that everybody else has suffered and they become a statistic. And yeah, you articulated that beautifully, even though it's a tough
It
pill to
was.
swallow for many. Gary, tell me, as part of your journey, one of my favorite questions to ask is, what is your biggest failure or regret? Obviously, you might be in the camp where, we don't perceive failure as failure. That's okay. Whatever it is that was, what was it and what did it teach you?
I think, I don't know if I would call it a failure. Maybe it's kind of a failure. Is I trying to fit in corporate America. Nothing against corporate America. I had to realize that I didn't fit. And that was it was very tough going through that and not really understanding, how come I don't fit here? But now that I'm out of it, I understand. I was always looking for efficiencies, and that's not really how corporate America is designed. It's not really designed for efficiency. It's more or less designed for compliance. And so if you're a boat rocker or get perceived as a boat rocker, you rub people the wrong way, even though your intent is to try to, help optimize things so that the company runs more efficiently. But that seems lost. So once I came to understand that to some degree while I was in corporate, that's when I said, okay, I'm going to build my own thing and then I'll just figure it out. And now I'm looking back, hindsight, I'm like, oh, okay, now I understand why I didn't fit in there.
Gary, with your permission, I think I'm going to borrow some of those adjectives.
Okay.
Boat rocker, independent. You also said you were entrepreneurial, and you also said in our prior conversation that you were questioning the way things were done. A little bit about me. I actually grew up in strategy consulting, where the name of the game was always figure out why things aren't working and find a solution. So you can imagine coming from there to transitioning into how do we work with individuals for them to keep more in their bottom line. Oftentimes, I mentioned earlier about how everybody can talk the talk. Most people can't really walk the walk. It's easy to say words, it's really much harder to implement. So, you and I are right along the same lines in terms of rock the boat, figure out what needs to
Yeah.
shake out. Let's figure out inefficiencies, because in your world, it means profits. In our world, it means improving the bottom line for individuals. And at the end of the day, if we can't focus on truly delivering on our promises, who are we as a
Yeah. Who are
company?
we?
Who are we
Right.
as a people, right?
Right.
Yeah, no, I love it. So how do you work with companies in terms of companies that you are consulting for? Obviously, you do your own thing. What does that look like typically for you?
Yeah, so usually I'll come in and I'll kind of assess like how their processes work. Again, right away, there's always a lot of paper processes. A lot of people don't really understand that you can use Google Drive and you can collaborate on documents and build contracts and things together. That saves so much time right there. In the past, from what I've seen, they create a Word document, then they email it to Jim over in sales, and then Jim emails it back to Larry, and then it goes back, and it's like, you guys could collaborate at the same time on that document. Just put it on the calendar. Here's for this contract. Do it, done. And it's a lot quicker. The contracts actually look a lot better. There are a lot more details in the scope of work and things like that. So
It also aligns what I call the front office of an organization to the
right.
back office. Obviously, companies are on different scales. One of the big issues that we saw, this is from my old life, specifically companies that had an internal finance organization, external sales organization. Even on the contracts, oftentimes finance would be in one camp, the sales organization would be in a different camp. Somebody at an executive level would talk about the things that they were due to align, but that never, in most cases, never really transpired down to the individuals that were the boots on the ground, right? The salespeople or the individuals in finance. And that always, it has a tendency of creating so much chaos between the front and the back office of an organization, regardless of how large the enterprise might be. That, to your point, if you can just find the alignment, and the collaboration in a way where everybody is able to provide their input, it actually makes that process, it brings the process to life. It makes it alive.
It does.
And it makes all the difference.
And, Google Documents, it's, the Google Cloud, it's almost free, or sometimes it is free, depending on, it's just an easy way to get people who've used paper for a long time to use Google Documents because it looks very similar to Word, Microsoft Word. And, that's scary for a lot of people. When you start talking about the cloud, they're like, what does that mean? And is it going to be hard to use? And so just showing them that. And then once you show them that, they kind of grow into using it. And then a lot of processes just get refined and optimized right there.
On the spot.
Adding a customer relationship management software tool also does the same thing. It just helps people keep track of, a lot of those companies don't, they just have a long list, like a spreadsheet. So, for them, it's like, we've been doing it this way for 30 years. Why change?
There is an easy way. There is an easier way, right?
Yes, there is. Definitely.
Gary, I've loved our conversation today. You've got so much wealth of knowledge to share with individuals. Are there any thoughts that kind of sit top of mind for you that you would like to part with our listeners before we conclude today's episode?
Yeah, I would say, if you're working a full-time job and you really want to build your own thing, the biggest thing is you have to structure your time and don't complain about it. Just look at every day as, what can I get done today? Even if it's an hour. Things compound. You have to think about compounding. And, you want to try to get more into get paid for thinking, not so much for getting paid for effort. So you can templatize certain things, and, maybe it's fewer clients that are higher value clients. The whole idea is try not to increase your hours any more than you have to, and then stack things. Cash flow, if you buy this property and cash flow, well, there you go. That's how you move forward. Again, learn to make something out of nothing. You have to look for the opportunities like you're looking for a lost set of keys.
And I would add to that, if you're in an area, we have a lot of physicians that are also listening to the podcast, and oftentimes they're ultra stranded for time. Yes, we hear you. I hear you. I know that you might be thinking about leaving that job just because it's gotten to the point where it's too much and you're no longer enjoying it. Find the people that can support you.
Yes, it's
Find
all about
a team that can support you. Yep. Because if not, to Gary's point, yes, could you do certain things? Absolutely. However, if it's not in complete alignment, and oftentimes you don't even know what that alignment looks like to what you want to do in the long run, you might end up missing out on years of lost opportunities simply because maybe it felt uncomfortable. Maybe you didn't find the right team. So ask around. I know that at least the physicians that we work with, they are trumpeting from the mountaintops to say, you've got to hire support. You've got to have somebody that's unbiased in your corner. And that's not just physicians, it's everybody out there. Because then everything that Gary, you said, becomes reality with that much more fuel in it. It shouldn't take people years. It can literally, in some cases, take months to get from, current state to how do we beautify and how do we elevate perfection. And we love playing that game.
We do.
Gary, thank you so much for being on the show here with us. As you're listening to this, stay tuned for your next episode of Your Business, Your Next Level. And if you want to learn more about how is it that you could be transforming the way that you do things when it comes to building wealth, check out our Wealth Health Scorecard on excelstra.com, and looking forward to hearing what you think about it.
Thank you for joining us on Your Business, Your Next Level podcast, where it is all about helping you make more, keep more, and elevating your business to the next level. To learn more, make sure you head over to www.podcast.excelstra.com, and don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the show. Again, that's podcast.excelstra.com. Until next time, thanks for listening.